Hello, I'm back. Today has been like about as productive as a day could be, truly. I walked my dog, I meal prepped. It's 5:30 now, so I have done a lot of like nothing. But I've also posted on all of my platforms, except YouTube, but I'm doing that now. I just want to sit and paint. I just want to sit and paint, and you can watch and enjoy, and then voiceover Aaron in the future will talk you through what's happening so that I can listen to my old My Chemical Romance CD that I just found and not get in trouble for playing copyrighted music, because that would be a horrible way to start a new YouTube channel. I am gonna step back from my tarot card project and paint just a different type of bush queen today. Doing something else, I don't know what yet. We're gonna discover that together, and it's gonna be like a really cute little journey for us. I'm excited. So anyway, here's the setup. Come on over, get you a bird's eye view right beside Mama. Sorry for saying that, that was horrible. Let's paint. Hello, it's me. It's Aaron from the future in the voiceover. I don't know where this voiceover is gonna take me. I'm just gonna roll with it. I might talk about, I am going to talk about what's happening in the video a little bit. As you can see right now, I'm erasing the harsh lines. Fascinating stuff, right? Well, you might not know this about pencils, so maybe it is fascinating stuff. Basically, there's like a thick layer of actual graphite sediment, let's call it, that sits on the top of your page. And as you can see, when I rub that away, there's still very clear lines for me to fill in. It's just not going to interfere with my paint, because what tends to happen if you don't do that step and you're just painting over pencil is the top layer of graphite mixes with your paint and makes it muddy and gross. And we don't want that. We don't want that. So I kind of just didn't know what I was doing today. As you can see, like I came up with a sketch, and it's like a cute, I imagine her being on campus at her university. So I'm calling her a collegiate queen in all of my social media. She's just chilling somewhere on campus between classes with a coffee, and there's a nice brick wall. She's got a very retro vibe to her. She may or may not be just embracing like vintage style, or maybe this is legitimately the 80s. I don't know, but either way, she has a perm. She has very large glasses. She has a pleated skirt and knee highs. So I mean, both would make sense. All of those things are back in style now. So maybe that's the vibe. Maybe it's a current queen rocking a retro look. Either way, she's fabulous. I'm really happy with her. I made a couple of different choices in this illustration, and I just wanted to experiment, and I'm really, really happy I did. So first and foremost, part of what I aim for with bush queens is for them to sort of look like, this is not going to make sense if you're not Canadian, but we had a channel in Canada growing up called Teletoon. I don't know if it's still on, but a lot of it was Canadian programming, and a lot of the artwork on those shows were very rough, sketchy looking artwork, and I really sort of embraced that when I started creating my queens, because they definitely, like, there's no realism in what I do whatsoever. These are illustrations, and they look illustrative, they look cartoony. But when I was thinking back to a lot of those shows on Teletoon, like, a lot of them had that going on, but it's not like they don't read. Like, you can still tell that these are women. So that's kind of what I go with. And another thing that I tried today was painting the sort of little background area, just that brick wall that she's sitting on, in watercolor instead of with acrylic. So there were also a lot of shows. I think The Kids from Room 402 is one of my favorite ones, and if memory serves, I might have to Google it, but I really, really feel like, in my memory at least, there would be watercolor paintings behind the kids that were sort of softer looking, so that the characters in the foreground would be sort of more bold looking, had brighter colors and more solid lines. And then the background would be watercolor illustrations I think they just used the same ones. So it was just like the same watercolor image with the characters in different places and drawn in different ways in front of them. And I was sort of thinking about that when I drew this, and I am absolutely going to keep doing it because I think it really works in keeping the character in the foreground and making her the focal point. But it also allows me to use different mediums, and I love doing that. I've done it before where I have used alcohol markers and acrylic, or alcohol markers and colored pencils, or watercolor and colored pencils, or acrylic and watercolor, which I did today, and it's my favorite combination so far. I think they really flatter each other. But for now, I have been doing the characters in acrylic for the past couple of months, I guess, and it's just become my favorite way to make them. I think the way they look in acrylic is as close to how I imagined them in my head as I've been able to come up with so far. I have a fair bit of control with this medium. It doesn't go everywhere. It's easy enough for me to work with. There are some differences in terms of the type of paint that you use that you have to be aware of. Like, a lot of them are what I really like about acrylic, but at the same time, it's what made switching to watercolor for the background a little bit easier too. So for example, when you're working with acrylic, you have to pre-mix the color you want on your palette, because they kind of can mix and blend on the paper or the canvas or whatever you're painting on, chunk of wood, which I am absolutely going to do someday. Painting skateboards is a goal of mine. So let's just stick around and watch for that. Thank you. But I have to sort of be aware of what the color is going to look like on the paper while it's on my palette. And that's kind of a challenge because you have to have a little bit of foresight. And also something that I didn't realize until the first time I drew Calypso, who is one of my recurring characters, and she is my muse. She is a beautiful woman of color, and she is thick and voluptuous and beautiful, and she is one of my favorite characters to draw, which is why I keep drawing her. But when I first drew Calypso, or when I first painted her in acrylic, I didn't take into consideration that acrylic gets darker as it dries. So like, as hours were passing and then a day passed, Calypso's skin was like a full shade darker than it was when I painted her. So that's just a little bit of it's an initial challenge that you kind of just have to get used to. I mean, it doesn't make it like hard. When I say challenge, it's just something that you kind of have to adjust to. And so adjusting to the medium of acrylic has been really interesting. But for the most part, I feel like I have a lot of control over it. And most importantly, it gives the end result that I want. She looks absolutely terrifying with no line work. The line work is my favorite part, but also the hardest part of drawing Bush Queens for sure. That's another challenge that I have been sort of dealing with. That I haven't quite found a perfect solution to. You'll even see what I'm talking about in this video, because it's an ongoing struggle, truly. And that's putting line work with marker over acrylic paint, because I'm in my sketchbook right now, and obviously that's just smooth drawing paper, which is fabulous, by the way, and very versatile. And the way that acrylic works with this paper, and the way that watercolors have been working with this paper, has been fantastic. But anyway, I digress. The line work is challenging because that smooth surface of the paper isn't there anymore when you put acrylic over it. Acrylic gives it a texture, so it makes the lines look textured as well. It makes them look kind of scratchy and broken, and that is a little bit of it doesn't hinder the drawing necessarily, but in my mind it kind of does, just because I wish it looked that little bit more perfect. But Bush Queens are so imperfect, and that is part of their charm. That's something that I want to retain as I develop them further. Their awkward hands, most of them don't even have 5 fingers. They're Flintstones feet, as I call them. Just things that don't necessarily work. They're always going to be imperfect, but I think that's part of what makes them so cute. So there are a couple similarities across the board too that I want to touch on that make them uniquely Bush queens, and I think it's really special, and it really confirms for me that I have found my style and something that I want to keep doing that is unique to me and my queens. And the way that I draw their faces is always the same. So the way that I do their eyes, their noses, their mouths, and their blush and their lipstick is the same for every single queen. But you'll notice that they don't all look identical. They actually all look very different. And I think that's sort of beautiful in a way, because that's relatable. That's how humans are too. We have a lot of very similar features, but we all look completely different. You can even take that into the world of animation and think like, okay, well, all the Simpsons characters are drawn the exact same way, all of their features. You can look at any character from the Simpsons and know that that's what they're from. Or like a South Park character, or any type of animation that has a distinctive look, yet each individual character looks different. They look like themselves. So the faces is how I do that. And obviously the signature bush, like that is something that I'm never going to stop doing. That's their trademark. How I display them is always going to be different though, because I want them to look like different types of women, always. So I've been experimenting a little bit more with their poses. That's something that's kind of hard to do as, well, I guess if you're an artist or an illustrator anyway. Learning to draw human anatomy, especially human anatomy in motion or in a pose that's not just straight up and down, is always a little bit of a challenge. But the more I practice, the more I get used to it, and I can kind of just say, okay, well, I want to have her sort of leaning on one hand and have her other one up on her knee, because something that I do always have to consider is how I'm going to make her bush visible. Which sounds ridiculous, but like these queens are ridiculous. They're ridiculous, and that's the other thing I love about them. They're so silly and they're so stupid. And like I said in my intro video, if the only response that I'm getting from somebody is that I'm being laughed at because these are dumb, I'm happy with that. They are dumb. If that's the emotional response that you get, cool. I am good with making you laugh at my expense, because I laugh at myself for these every day. And even when I was sitting and drawing and painting this queen here, I was having so much fun. Like, the process of making her was so relaxing, because like I said at the beginning of the video, I was busy. I had a really productive day. I sort of took care of everything. And then it was sort of just an evening chill paint sesh. I just sat down and I painted. And it was really fun. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't do a tarot card queen yesterday, because I had no ideas and I didn't want to make myself feel obligated to keep working on the series that I've gotten myself into, because then there's a sense of pressure behind this work, and I don't want that for myself. I really just want these to be a creative outlet, something that I do for fun that makes me happy and hopefully makes other people happy. And I am excited to get back to the tarot card series, but there are 78 tarot cards, I'm pretty sure. That's a freaking lot. I don't want to feel like I am required to do that and nothing else until the series is done, because that would just become stressful, and I don't want that at all. So, it's always going to be a mixture for me. Plus, we're into September now, which is what really inspired me to draw this queen in school in a sweater. September is my favorite month. In the city that I live in, I mean, currently there's a heat warning because it's going to be in the mid 30s for the next few days, which is stupid and just disrespectful, quite frankly. But hopefully that'll settle down towards the end of the month, and we'll get that just perfect, coolish but still warm September weather that I love so much. And I already have so many fun ideas for queens. Like, I am very thankful to have had this concept come to me. I don't know how it happened. It was a culmination of a lot of different things, but I have stumbled upon something so incredibly versatile. Like, there are an endless way to draw women. Endless. And there are endless different types of women that I can draw, and I can put them in endless different themes and just continue to have fun with that forever. There are also endless different projects that I'm thinking of doing. So it's a very exciting time as I delve into the wild world of YouTube art. But I definitely want to make sure that I'm making videos like this more often than not, because just to produce this type of content, like I said, I really just put the camera beside me yesterday, and then I sat and I painted her like normal. So it didn't feel any different than just sitting and drawing for enjoyment like I always do. And that's freaking amazing. Like when you find a way to put together a project in a way that doesn't feel like a job or like a task, I think you're just absolutely winning. And I feel like even coming up with Bush Queens and the response that I've gotten so far, it's early days, but for the most part, people really seem to like them, and they seem to be getting what I am trying to do with them. And that just makes me so happy and so proud. And it actually makes me feel capable of doing a lot. I really genuinely, not to brag, but I feel that these queens have so much potential. And I'm always imagining the next thing that I want to do. And it's very motivating. I'm somebody who comes from a fitness background. I'm still a coach. And so I spend a lot of time posting about goals and motivation and nutrition. And I'm always just very goal oriented. And I want to be doing more and more. And I always want to be reaching for something. So even in a creative endeavor, I always want to get better at painting and drawing, or I want to try different things like adding watercolor for backgrounds. And then when I see it come to fruition and it works out, it just motivates me to keep trying. So that's why I think it's so important to always try new things, even if you just like have the idea, but you aren't fully confident that you can do it. I mean, you might actually be better at it than you thought. Like, I would say personally that these queens, in terms of skill level, it doesn't feel like to me they require any whatsoever. But then I talk to people all the time who say like they can't even draw a stick figure. So it really is all relative. You might be putting yourself down for no reason. You may very well be better at whatever your idea is than you thought. And not to mention, you can't get better at something until you start. This is me speaking like a coach. I talk like this all the time about people with weight loss goals or whatever it is. You just need to start. You know, it kind of just, it comes with practice, and it does come with guidance and help. I watch so many other artists, and I take huge inspiration from everywhere. Like sometimes when I don't know what to do, the first thing I do is open up my Instagram Explore page, and that is one of the most inspiring little acts that I do. I just see so much creativity there, and it's astounding. I made some weird choices with her sweater, by the way. Painting fabric and clothing for these queens is one of my favorite parts, because obviously one of the things that differentiates them is that they're wearing different things, but they do always have to have an exposed bush. So they are always wearing panties of some type, or a bodysuit or a bikini, because they're never nude. But then I need to pose them, and I need to draw their clothing in a way that is lifted up or out of the way of the crotch area. So in this case, obviously, she's just sitting in a casual knee up pose. And she's wearing a little skirt, you know, that'll do it. But painting fabric in this style is interesting because it, like I said, is very cartoony and very animated looking, but it still needs to have movement, and it still needs to read like it's draping and moving like fabric. So her sweater, I did some sort of like droopy bits, and ultimately, yeah, you know what? It ended up looking like she has 3 boobs. And that's what I mean about all of these queens being imperfect in some way. Their imperfections are just funny to me. Like, I see that she slightly looks like she has 3 boobs, and I go with it. I posted about that on Instagram. Follow my Instagram, by the way. The link is below. Thank you. It's just like, I'm not gonna stress over stuff like that when you can just look at it and go, OMG, this queen has 3 boobs. That's hilarious. Like, I mean, next time I paint a sweater, I won't do it that way. Simple as that. Or I will, because that is actually kind of cracking me up.
What's better than 2 titties? 3 titties. So their little hands bring me so much joy. Like, this is an example of one who only has 4 fingers on each hand, or 3 and a thumb. And that happens a lot, just because if I'm drawing them a certain way and I feel like adding the 5th one will throw it off and make it look stupid, then I'll just leave it at 4. So there. And I actually think that everyone draws books the same way. Like, imagine how you would draw a book. I draw them that way too, you know? So some of the little details and their accessories, the things that are in their world, have been really, really fun for me to play with. When I first started drawing Bush Queens, I would pretty much just draw a woman standing in an outfit of some kind. And it's only kind of recently that I started dabbling with painting their environments and little accessories. And I have really, really noticed that the devil is in the detail. The more time I spend putting little details into these things, the more I love them and the better that they ultimately end up looking. So that's why I'm sort of trying to expand the way I think about these all the time. Okay, so now you can see that just the sort of concrete part I'm painting in gray. And one thing I will say that makes it a lot easier, like I sort of touched on before, is that there's really not a lot of pre-blending. Like, I just put together a wash of gray, and I can pretty much just add shadow by spending more time in that specific spot. Like under her, I make it a little bit darker as if she's casting a bit of a shadow, and I just do that by keeping the same paint on the brush and just spending more time there, opposed to if I were to do that with acrylic, I would have had to mix up a darker gray. So anyway, little technical education there for you. These are the most awkward bricks in the world. I time-lapsed the bricks so that you didn't have to just sit through the painstaking process of making these ugly-ass bricks, but they did come together in a way that I am very satisfied with in the end, especially after I added all the lines. And that's pretty much going to do it. This is the queen, the first September queen, and she's kind of giving Lorraine from Mad TV, not gonna lie. But shit, Lorraine was like my favorite character, so I am happy with that. I hope everybody enjoyed the painting video. Much more to come. Hopefully it's not a heat wave where you live. See you next